A woman is running through the woods while her body is drenched in blood. Her name is Olena, and after some time, she wakes up panicking, struggling not to let something from her dreams affect her. Her dog, Ozzy, is beside her when she wakes up. Then she hears a sound coming from the kitchen. Smiling, she heads there, knowing it's her fiancé, Andrii. Next, as the couple greets each other with sweet good mornings, Andrii heads to the shower. After that, Olena immediately calls her aunt and tells her about her dream from the night before. Olena mentions that she dreamt death had come to take someone close to her. Her aunt becomes startled and tells her to let him go. They end the call after discussing a few other things. Then Olena stares in Andrii's direction, her expression changing as she contemplates alone. Time passes, and tension grows across Ukraine as Russian troops invade the country. This brings devastation to Konotop, the small town where Olena lives with her fiancé and her dog. The once lively town is reduced to ruins, and its people live in constant fear. Andrii then receives a call to join the national military. Driven by his sense of duty, he decides to join the local resistance to fight against the invaders. However, he knows he needs to ensure Olena's safety before leaving. One morning, Andrii tells Olena to pack her things as quickly as she can. She does as he says, and they begin their journey. Then they face a challenge. Every border is occupied by Russian troops. Andrii grows confused about where to take them. Olena suggests going to her aunt's house. At first, Andrii refuses, saying it isn't far enough, but Olena convinces him that her aunt's place is the safest. She explains it wasn't even discovered during World War II. Finally, Andrii agrees and starts driving that way. Later, their journey is interrupted when Russian troops surround their car. Andrii and Olena try to stay calm in this tense situation. The soldiers ask where they are headed. Andrii calmly replies that they are going to his wife's house nearby and explains they are civilians. He also shows them his documents, hoping they will let them pass. At first, the chief of the soldiers agrees to let them go. However, one soldier points out that their car is in good condition and suggests they should secure it for themselves. The chief agrees, and the soldiers order Andrii and Olena to get out of the car. Andrii quickly realizes the situation is turning against them. Before they can make him surrender, he starts firing his gun at the soldiers. Then he starts the engine. Running over the leg of one soldier, he shoots. The Russian troops shoot back at the car, but Andrii keeps driving until they are out of sight. The soldiers, frustrated by the chaos, are left irritated by the whole mess. Andrii drives through the woods, and they reach Olena's aunt's house as it gets dark. Olena calls out for her aunt and hands over her dog, Ozzy, who keeps whining from the wound it got during the earlier gunfire. Then Olena notices blood on her palms and comes to her senses. She frantically searches for Andrii and sees he is still in the car. Next, she runs to him, crying. Andrii is in pain but has been enduring it just to get her to safety. Olena cries out for her aunt as she tries to move him out of the car. Then Andrii, unable to bear the pain any longer, slips from her hands and falls to the ground. Olena freezes, her crying stops, and she prepares for something unusual. She clasps her hands together, closes her eyes, tilts her head upward, and begins chanting. Andrii, thinking she is just playing, weakly stops her. In that moment, he takes his last breath and dies. Overwhelmed with grief and rage, Olena cradles his lifeless body and screams into the night. Meanwhile, the Russian troops deal with their own casualties. One soldier is dead and another is injured. They place the corpse in a plastic bag and take it to their base camp. As they move, they hear Olena's desperate cry echoing through the woods. Startled, the chief comments that someone else must have had a bad day too. In the morning, Olena cleans up Andrii's body, her eyes still filled with tears. Her aunt stands silently behind her, observing. Olena tells her aunt that, for the first time, she feels alive and normal. She adds that Andrii was special to her, as he made her feel like a regular girl, helping her hide her true abilities. But now that he's been taken away, she won't forgive those responsible. After that, Olena grabs an axe and walks toward a drywall. With all her strength, she breaks through it and enters a cringing room covered in spider webs. She stands before a large standing mirror and stares at herself. Slowly, she begins removing her clothes. Then she takes a knife and cuts her elbow, causing a strange light-like energy to pass through her skin until it illuminates her eyes. Meanwhile, the Russian troops continue their cruelty. They raid the town, looting anything valuable. They even abduct a woman from her home to abuse her further at their base camp. Their brutality knows no bounds. They shoot an old woman on her way home without a second thought. Olena, now transformed into her true self as a witch, writes something on a piece of paper. She drops it into a glass filled with blood. At that exact moment, the injured soldier begins vomiting blood and strange substances. Along with the blood, he throws up the piece of paper, which reads, "The woods will be their own grave." The soldier becomes confused, unable to understand how he swallowed the paper. Then suddenly, he collapses and dies in front of everyone. His death, though bizarre and unnatural, is dismissed by one of the other soldiers, who claims it was a heart attack. The others, believing this explanation, move on. That same night, the chief senses that something is wrong. He orders his team to release the captives, including the woman they had taken. Although the soldier who brought her is unhappy about letting her go, he obeys. He drives her through the woods and drops her off, telling her to walk the rest of the way to her home. The woman, weak and barely able to walk after the abuse, sees a car approaching. When she notices a woman stepping out of the car, she asks for help. Then the woman reveals herself. It is Olena. With rage burning inside her, Olena looks at the woman and asks if she wants revenge. The next night, the chief dreams of Olena, warning him that the woods will be their grave. He wakes up in a panic and notices Bandos leaving the tent. Bandos explains he's going to relieve himself, but he becomes horrified when his urine turns to blood. Meanwhile, two soldiers chat nearby. One mentions having a wife and child in Russia, making the other jealous. During his patrol, the jealous soldier hears strange noises and notices money scattered on the ground. Curious, he follows the trail. Suddenly, Olena appears and possesses him, taking his family photo in the process. In the morning, the soldiers discover strange items hanging around their base. The chief, furious, accuses someone of pulling a prank. Then another soldier leads them to a horrifying sight. The man who followed the money the previous night is tied to a tree, groaning in pain. Next, Olena stands in the woods, chanting. She repeatedly stabs a strange, humanoid figure that almost looks like a voodoo doll in her hands. Each stab causes the tied man to scream in agony until, finally, he bursts into pieces before the soldiers' eyes. Speechless, the soldiers stare in horror. The chief insists they are being hunted by Ukraine's secret squads. A half-Ukrainian soldier suggests that witches might be responsible, citing local myths from his family. The chief, however, dismisses the idea and orders the team to stay alert. Later, the soldier with a wife and child receives a chilling photo on his phone. It shows the dead bodies of his family. He panics and begs the chief to let him leave, but when he tries to show the photo, it disappears. No one believes him. Desperate, he steals a tanker in an attempt to escape. As he speeds through the woods, Olena appears before him, taunting him about his family. Enraged, he accelerates recklessly, crushing a tent in his path and gruesomely killing a soldier inside, while the others try to stop him. Next, Olena returns to her aunt's house and enters the hidden room. She performs rituals naked, chanting under her breath. As she continues, a dark force surrounds her and enters her mouth, transforming her appearance completely. Her aunt senses something is wrong. She notices strange signs in the sky and the dying vultures nearby, prompting her to rush to Olena. When her aunt sees Olena, she fearfully asks if she has started using dark powers. Olena, with a cold demeanor, replies that she needs more power and then leaves. That same day, she hunts down another soldier, killing him and taking his heart, which she eats to gain strength. However, her hunger for power grows. The next day, Olena reveals herself to all the soldiers, including the chief, using her powers to make them unconscious. When they wake up, they immediately sense something is off. They inspect their surroundings and discover the corpses are missing. The chief orders his men to follow the path where the bodies appear to have been dragged. All of them comply except Bandos, who is too weak from excessive bleeding in his private area. Next, Bandos goes to relieve himself, but notices strange insects in the blood he passes. Terrified, he drives maniacally into town, where he encounters the woman he had abused and raped. She stands in his path, holding an axe. Although she hesitates to kill him at first, when she sees him reaching for his gun, she acts swiftly. She chops off his hand and buries the axe fully into his head, finishing her revenge. Meanwhile, Olena returns to her aunt and demands that she remove a bullet lodged in her body. As her aunt pulls the bullet out, her expression changes, and she tells Olena she feels something strange happening to her. Olena becomes aggressive, dismissing her aunt's concerns, and warns her that the troops will arrive soon before storming off. Later, the chief kills the half-Ukrainian soldier as he tries to leave. The 4 remaining soldiers follow the trail of their comrade's flesh, finding it hung in trees and eaten by vultures. One of the soldiers, overwhelmed by the horror, declares they have angered God before shooting himself. The others split up to search the area. As 2 soldiers search, an argument breaks out between them, and one kills the other. Meanwhile, the chief and another soldier enter the witch's secret room. Inside, one of them touches a cursed object and bursts into flames. Panicking, the chief kills him before he can get close. At that moment, Olena arrives. Just as she is about to kill the chief, her aunt appears and reveals a shocking truth. She has figured out what is wrong with her body. Olena is pregnant. Overwhelmed with emotion, Olena cries and halts her attack. Her aunt explains that killing the chief would end her as well because of the bond she shares with her unborn child. Deciding to spare the chief, Olena makes him a witness. She allows him to be captured by Ukrainian soldiers, where he repeats over and over that the witch is responsible for everything. 9 months later, Olena is seen holding her baby, her appearance having returned to normal. She stands by the window, singing a lullaby caringly to her child.